guys, how's it going? My name is Dalaran, and in today's video I am proud to present all of you one of the best changes for Frost Death Knights. But in this video we'll also take a look at some of the changes to Unholy as well. Frost Death Knights for the longest time have been asking for a viable two-hand playstyle, and finally, with Blizzard recently adding for Fury, I guess quite a bit now, adding for Fury Warrior a single-minded Fury where you can actually play with one-handers, and it gives you a specific buff whether you have one-handers or two-handers. Similar buff was brought to Frost Death Knight, where now you have a difference of playstyle between two one-handers and a massive juggernaut two-hander. So as a Frost DK, just go ahead and slap on that Gatiku that you've been holding on to for a while and play your Frost Death Knight to your heart's content. Now this is only available right now on BTR and beta, so this isn't something you can do on live. I guess it should have been a little bit more clear, but Frost Death Knights can now use a two-hander, and this happened with one of the passes they added, Might of the Frozen Wastes. It reads, while dual wielding, your Obliterating Frost Strike will strike with your offhand, and each weapon can be engraved with a Rune Forge enchant. So the dual wield aspect of this playstyle hasn't changed. The thing is about the dual wield, however, it was just gonna be stronger. It is gonna be extra auto attacks because you have a one-hander which has a faster swing speed than your main hand. I don't even know if offhand attacks can proc it, but basically auto attacks have a chance to proc Killing Machine procs. So with so many auto attacks with a one-hander dual wield, I don't even know if the offhand weapon can proc it either, but even just the one-hander weapon in main hand, just get faster swings, some more chances, compared to a massive two-hander, which is much slower in terms of the auto attacks. So with the dual wield, we're going to get more procs, but also Rune Forge. And Rune Forges are actually going to be quite massive for Death Knight, since even more runes have been added. You have Rune of Hysteria, you can have Rune of Razorites, which is what most Death Knights would run in the main hand. You have Sanguination, is probably going to be a Blood DK rune, Spell Warding for PvP, Apocalypse for Unholy Death Knight, Rune of Fallen Crusader usually put in your offhand, but I mean, you have quite a bit of runes now with Hysteria, Razor of Ice, and Fallen Crusader at least being something that Frost Death Knights might be able to use. Hysteria being the one that plays with runic power, which could be maybe really good with a breath build. So there's quite a lot of plays for runes for dual wield playstyle of Frost DK. So you were naturally going to be stronger than a dual wield, and Blizzard had to make some changes. You had to have had some kind of a buff for the two-hand playstyle. So the two-hand playstyle now reads, wielding a two-handed weapon, a big chopper, increases obliterate damage by a whole 25%, and increases the chance for your auto attacks, vertical strikes to grant you Killing Machine. So I don't really know what the increase is for auto attacks. I don't think it's like a Killing Machine. Yeah, so I think maybe doubles since you do less swings with the weapon, or maybe Blizzard tries to normalize it towards the speed, like the sword speed is 2.60, while a one-hander would be a, I believe, 2.6 normalized for weapons. Yeah, 2.6. So I think what they did is just normalized it for the different play styles of Frost DK to just give you equal or similar amounts of Kill Machine procs. But either way, it plays really well. So this is the playstyle that was necessary for Frost Death Knights, and this is, I think, the only thing that Frost Death Knights got in this expansion, with this build in particular this week, which I think is about all we have here, which isn't a bad thing. I think there's one more thing they've gotten with Wraithwalk. You embrace the power of Shadowlands instead of you step into the Shadowlands, since, you know, we'll literally be in the Shadowlands. But that's really massive. This is a big buff. This is huge for Frost Death Knights. Now, this finally opens up opportunities for Frost two-handed dual wield playstyle. Like, there's the DK right here. I think he's trying out the dual wield build. Yep, trying to see how well the dual wield playstyle can play, and then you can play the two-hand. And so the differences between these builds is going to be slight. So I'm going to just kind of hit a train dummy without any cooldowns or nothing, just to show you a little bit of like the breakdown of my abilities. So let me start with the original Frost DK, and I'll put it on like a timer. Let's do like 2 minutes. I know 2 minutes isn't always perfect, and the talents I'll be playing, actually I guess I should be pressing my Pillar of Frost if I am going to be going Obliteration. So yeah, so let's play this Obliteration build with Cold Heart, Murderous Efficiency, Asphyxiate, Frozen Pulse, Permafrost, Gathering Storm, and Obliteration. We'll keep exactly the same gear, and the only thing we'll do is we'll swap a weapon. I'm not really going to use traits or essences really to make this playstyle. I think, don't I have like Unholy Death Knight? Yeah, I do have Unholy Death Knight trait, so I could just swap to those because those are not going to affect my playstyle in any way. Yeah, we'll just do that temporarily, just for the sake of normalizing damage, so you guys can see like how the damage is going to be. So you have two weapons, one with a Rune of Razor Ice, one with a Fallen Crusader, and exactly the same gear. Not going to be using my Azurite gear or essences whatsoever. So we're just going to put it on timer and try to see if we can get some damage in and see how well it works out. And time. So what do we have for damage breakdown? So with the dual wield playstyle, Obliterate ends up doing quite a bit of damage, but that makes sense since we're playing Obliteration, where we'll be able to get quite a bit of crits from it. You have the main hand and offhand doing quite a bit of damage, so put together it's not a bad number. Frost Fever damage has been severely toned down with this expansion. Remorseless Winter though, however, and Frost Fever are still doing quite good for a dual wield playstyle. Frost Strikes are doing quite a bit since, you know, you're increasing the damage Frost Strikes can do. Howling Blast obviously is doing really well because it's hitting multiple targets, but you can kind of see like the breakdown, right? No abilities, it's kind of like a nice little like stairs that it builds in terms of like the playstyle that it offers. But the two-hand playstyle is slightly different, and you'll be able to use certain talents, I think, definitely to accentuate one playstyle or the other. We'll talk about that in a second, but let's swap to a big old meaty chopper of Gatiko and show you what that playstyle is going to look like. We'll put it on timer again. We'll play exactly the same playstyle as we did earlier. And time. We had a kill machine proc, but I'm not going to commit. So you can kind of see where the damage is a little bit different. I mean, it looks similar. It just looks like Obliterate, main hand, and two hand have been combined. Frost Strikes are doing a little bit more damage, but also it looks like, you know, they have been combined. Frost Fever is doing a lot less damage in comparison because, well, Obliterate and Frost Strike, like the bars themselves, are a lot bigger. So the playstyles are very, very similar. You'll just have a lot more prominent of a bar with Obliterate since, again, the main hand and offhand abilities are combined together into one. But you also see kind of like where a good portion of your damage comes from with Death Knight. I would say that with the two-hand playstyle, you do get quite a bit of this Obliterate damage, which is not as magical as the Frost Strikes and all those other pieces would be. You can kind of see where we had it right here and where we had it right here. Yeah, so this is more or less very similar in terms of if you were to put this bar together with this bar and the Obliterate offhand bar together with the Obliterate bar, then yeah, certain abilities would get ahead slightly. They're similar, but also very small differences between the two. So I think what will happen with the two-hand versus dual-wield playstyle is while they are similar, there are going to be certain talents that benefit them better. Like with the dual-wield playstyle, you have two runes, one of them being Razor Ice. Razor Ice is an auto attack or throw abilities that puts a debuff on the enemy where it'll make them take more frost damage. So abilities like Breath of Sindragosa would be extremely strong, especially together with Hypothermic Presence, which seems to be a really strong combo right now on live, or at least in the beta version of the game. Also with the dual-wield playstyle, your Frost Scythe would be exceedingly strong because of the extra frost damage that it can do. Of course, this would also work for Obliterate as well to some extent, because both of them will do the same damage, but extra frost damage to the single target, or if you can, you know, auto-attack one target for a bit, build up the charges, auto-attack another target, this will get a little more value. So anything that does that magic damage like Cold Heart, which is another talent we didn't even get to use here, all these abilities would actually end up benefiting just slightly more from that extra frost damage. So going for extra mastery together with Rune of Razor Ice would just make sense. But with the dual-wield playstyle, you'll really have more damage committed towards your Obliterate. Your Obliterate does the most amount of damage. So potentially you might go for different stats, like maybe haste, crit, you get more auto attacks since you have a massive melee weapon. Maybe go for more versatility rather than mastery since you're doing so much physical damage. And then there are secondary traits for Obliterate and other abilities. Like Obliterate can actually have its damage increased by 20% at level 52. At level 56, your Empower Room weapon cooldown is reduced by 15 seconds, so it's not 2-minute cooldown properly. And then Killing Machine can eventually make it so your next Obliterate deals frost damage. So this damage is not only going to be physical, which can be blocked by armor, but instead magical, so ignores armor altogether. And with the dual-wield playstyle, your Obliterate will simply do 25% more damage. So in the future, there might be certain playstyles. It all depends if the frost damage for Obliterate is supposed to benefit from mastery. If it is, then dual-wield playstyle might end up taking advantage of it. If it doesn't, however, because it hasn't done on the beta so far, the Might of Frozen Waste two-hand playstyle might be a lot stronger. So I feel like in the end, when it comes to min-maxing, one of these builds is going to be stronger than another, to some extent. But at least there's an option for Death Knights to choose which playstyle they want. I think there's benefits with both playstyles, depending on the situation. You have a little bit more bursty playstyle with the two-hand, and you have more sustained, magic-oriented, frost-oriented with the dual-wield. So certain stats with certain weapons might be better. But this does offer you an opportunity if you want to commit yourself to a two-hand, only two-hand, Frost DK, big Blitz playstyle. There are talents for it. You can grab an Inexorable Assault to make those Obliterates even chunkier, since you're going to be pressing that quite a bit. You're going to be going maybe Obliteration if you want to make sure those Obliterates are guaranteed big burst damage, and trust me, when you get that frost damage on Obliterate crits, then that's just going to go right through the enemy's armor. It does direct damage, and it's so effective. So there are going to be, I think, certain talents that are going to be better for one build or another. But this is actually just overall a really cool playstyle. I'm a huge fan of the fact that Blizzard added a two-hand playstyle for Frost. I think I'm going to end up playing that most likely for the next expansion. And of course, I mean, with the animation of Obliterate, who wouldn't want to play a two-hand Frost DK Obliterate when your Obliterate looks like this? I mean, it's an amazing animation. It looks awesome, and it fits to the big Obliterate ability, the name behind it, and the kind of damage that I think it's going to pack in the next expansion. Next, we got a couple changes to Unholy Death Knight, and in this video I just kind of want to go over some of the quick things that Unholy Death Knights have gotten recently. So first of all, your big button, your big cooldown, which is the Army of the Dead. For Unholy Death Knights, Blizzard wanted to make it a little bit less of a ramp up, because right now if you were to play Unholy, you have to pop Army like 8 seconds before you pull the boss, because it takes up 3 runes to summon the army. It is a big cooldown, so a big rune cost makes sense, but having to time it like that always felt a little bit weird. So Blizzard is making it a little bit easier. So when you summon your Army of the Dead, it now costs only 1 rune, which lets Death Knight kind of set up a little bit faster with the boss to maximize the uptime of the Army of the Dead and have an easier time putting it out. It's already an 8-minute cooldown. It's quite a long one anyway. So making it only 1 rune makes it so much easier to play around and lets your Army of the Dead with Mages of the Dead and that whole playstyle less time for your mages not doing anything and idling, and more time for them to actually go and attack stuff and kill things. And it's glorious, it's beautiful, it's wonderful. And wait, oh, I didn't know the pet bar actually controlled the undeads. Wow, the pet bar for Unholy Death Knight is better than the Warlock pet bar, isn't it? Oh my goodness, I never knew you could actually control all of your undeads with a pet bar. Wow, if only Warlocks can get something like this, then I think we'll be in a good spot. Wow, how are Death Knight's pets, the zombies without a brain? Like literally, they're dead. There's a rotted brain in there. How are these guys smarter than like a Warlock's pet? I don't understand. Then we got a couple changes to a few talents, and some of the things Blizzard wanted to do is I think they buffed the Unholy Blight. It means they'll 5% increase damage per stack of enemies affected. So now Unholy Blight has a bit more playstyle with pets. Already it is a very wanted talent by Death Knights on the PTR/beta. It's actually really good now. 1 rune, 45-second cooldown, surround yourself with a vile swarm of instincts that will sting the enemy, stacking up to 4 times. And your pets deal 5% more damage to enemies that have this dot on them. But now they made it so your pets do 5% more damage per stack. So now this talent became even stronger for this heavy pet playstyle that just about every single Unholy Death Knight has been using on the beta. This hopefully should make this talent more viable, especially for PvP, because right now Burst and Swords and Ebon Fever just being so dominant in AoE, single target, and now Unholy Blight with a master pet build, with a big old Army of the Damned, with all those Mages of the Damned, I think that could be really strong going into the next expansion. We also got to change to Soul Reaper, so this ability, in the row that it was in, it's actually a lot different. So this was like the row for you to generate more resources. Bursting a Festering Wound has a 10% chance to grant Runic Corruption. Runic Corruption being a way for your Death Knight to gain runes a little quicker. Each runic power you spend has a 1.4% chance to increase your rune regeneration area by 100 for 3 seconds. So Frost Death Knights would just get runes coming back a little bit quicker. So with Bursting Festering Wounds, has a 10% chance to grant you Runic Corruption when you pop in them all the time, especially let's say during Apocalypse, which pops up to 4 Festering Wounds. You can get quite a decent proc. Harbinger of Doom is just Some dooms trigger 50% more often and can accumulate 2 charges, so it's more value, right? You can either get more runes, or you can get more value for the runic power you spend, and you're getting the free procs of death coils, which can be good. And this used to be an ability that was a cooldown, where you would press it and would generate your runes. And it would put a small damage on an enemy, and I think if the enemy died with this ability, it grants you haste. So then they changed this ability to a simple execute. Strike an enemy for a little bit of shadow damage, afflict an enemy with Soul Reaper. After 5 seconds, if the target is below 35% health, this effect will explode, dealing additional 1,192 shadow damage. Going to be bigger once we're level 16 Shadowlands. So this ability is honestly a execute now, and if the enemy dies with this ability, you get the runic corruption, so that'll give you the resources back faster. So this ability is simply an execute. So if you want to go for a playstyle that's not going to be execute heavy, Soul Reaper becomes less dominant in the row. That's all about resources and value. If you are going to have execute based fights, Soul Reaper is going to be really good there. In PvP, I think Soul Reaper could be really good to have more of that finishing power. Burn Holy usually has a very good sustain and decent burst, but doesn't really ever have like the execute potential. This would be the execute potential there, and this would actually be really good in a raid fight, especially if it's a long execute fight too. Harbinger of Doom now have gotten better because of that, and Pestilence and Pestilence got a little bit stronger because these are all about like resource management, and this is less of a resource. Used to be the go-to resource ability. So that's going to be a small change there. Then we have a change to Unholy Strike. It's no longer Unholy Frenzy, it's now an active ability. Like when you press it, something happens. Strike the target, dealing shadow damage to them, infect the target with 4 festering wounds, and sending you into Killing Frenzy, increasing your haste by 15% for 12 seconds. So this ability is now active, so which is interesting. It has a still very short cooldown. It now costs 2 runes, but it generates a lot of festering wounds. So originally this ability would be a buff on yourself that would make you go into frenzy, and your auto attacks generate festering wounds. It would generate a lot of those festering wounds, and you could use them in PvP necrotic strikes. In PvE you could use scourge strikes. They could proc bursting swords if you wanted to, if you're talented into it for AoE cleave. And of course you can also combine it together with apocalypse for a big bursty setup, summon the army, pop all those festers at the same time, and just kind of have a little bit of burst. So this is what this ability is going to do now. It's now going to give you a limited amount of festering wounds. It's not going to let you keep stacking them over and over and over and over and over, which you would think is a kind of bad thing. And in a sense, I guess it is kind of bad, but it's not as bad as I think, honestly, because it limits you. So it's now less dominant in terms of trying to be competitive with the rest of these abilities. It has a bit of more burst now to it. It does cost runes. So it's different, right? If anything to say, it is different, but I think it's going to be less dominant, less stronger to be competitive in this whole row. So it still will be really good for PvP, I think, because it'll have that burst. Apocalypse does a bit of damage. Apocalypse pops those wounds. Every one of those wounds will do a bunch of damage. So if you're trying to walk up to an enemy and trying to burst them down, hit him with it, Apocalypse, and you just did a bunch of burst with festering wounds, an Unholy Strike, and Apocalypse all together. And now you have this whole army of the dead that's now attacking the enemy, and now you have a little bit extra 50% increase haste, and it's a very short cooldown. It does now cost 2 runes, which is the weird part. I will say that. So I'm not used to that whatsoever, the fact that it costs runes. But it's not bad whatsoever. I think this is an interesting change to the talent. It'll be hard to tell if it'll be that good in a row. I think it could have potential overall. I think I'm personally going to end up playing Armory of the Dam just because I love the ability of having so many zombies and so many undeads, and that's just my favorite thing. But in the row with the Unholy Pact and Unholy Strike, this could be a decent ability, maybe potentially in PvP. But past that, I can't really think of anywhere else it could be that good in, but you know, I guess we'll have to wait and see what happens in the next expansion in terms of like how good this will be. Like sims are going to be necessary here, but it's a slight change for Unholy Strike ability. And that's going to be just about all the major important big updates for Death Knights with Frost, as well as some updates for Unholy. Overall, I gotta say, this is really cool. I like some of the changes Blizzard has done. Now, there are some minor updates as well for Death Knights, mostly to like conduits and stuff, and maybe some changes with soul binds and actually even, covenant abilities too. But we are in PTR in this Death Knight, and those are more balanced tunings than anything. So I felt like only covering the most important bits that I think you guys would be excited for. And this stuff is so exciting that I actually covered this before the Rogue Legendaries, especially for the Frost Death Knight 2-hand thing. So hopefully you guys enjoyed. Let me know your thoughts about the changes to the Death Knights, especially with the two-hand playstyle for Frost. What do you think about the changes to Unholy recently? Does Unholy Frenzy look any better, or is it not as good? What do you think? How should Blizzard adjust it, if anything? Overall, I'm very excited to play some Frost DK in an expansion with a big old two-hand chopper. I'm even probably going to start gearing up my Death Knight and trying to get some best of slot gear, so I'll have the easiest level of experience with a massive two-hander going into the next expansion. But thank you guys so much for checking out this video. I really do hope you guys enjoyed. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below, and I'll see all of you in another one.